My name is Prateek, and on behalf of Microsoft, worxogo, and Value Prospect, I welcome you all for this exclusive virtual workshop on winning with behavior science, dealing with changing HCP needs in a post-COVID world. Thank you very much for sparing your time and joining this workshop. Before we start, a few guidelines I would like to make you aware of. I would request all of you to please be on mute. The webinar is happening on Teams platform, so your names would be visible in the attendee list and the session would be recorded. Hope this is fine with all. We would be taking your questions during the Q&A session. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can post the same in the chat box, or you can raise your hand. You can use the hand raise option. With this, I would like to hand over the stage to Mr. Anant Sood, the co-founder worxogo. Over to you, Anant.
Thanks, Prateek, and good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here, and we're delighted to partner with Microsoft and Value Prospect for a very fascinating conversation today. I'm very happy to be here with a very experienced set of folks who have been on the front lines and done some really fascinating stuff in driving and responding to the changing HCP needs. Uh, Today on the panel, I'm very happy to introduce Mr. Rajiv Gulati, who's a senior pharma leader with more than 40 years of experience. Happens to be the first employee who started Eli Lilly in India, was the managing director and chairman, and brought the firm to where it is today in India. He's also been, he's worked with multiple other organizations such as Ranbaxy, where he was president of the global business. And one thing that stands out in his overall career, being a veteran in sales force effectiveness and an advocate for empowering the MRs, is he has his leadership and mentoring has brought some of the leaders in the pharma sector in India who have directly worked under him. So Rajiv, thank you for being here. Delighted to have you on today. Would be great if you can.
Glad to be here, and thanks for such a nice introduction. I don't know whether I deserve it.
You deserve it and more, Rajiv. It would be great if you could switch on your video, Rajiv.
Video is on.
You might want to just try it once again. Maybe I don't see it.
Okay, I'll try once again.
Sure. So as you do that, secondly,
can you see me now?
No. Well, that's fine. I mean, we can
because I don't know. I can see my picture and your picture and.
Fair enough. So I think we'll just have someone try and fix it for you in the background while we speak. So secondly, delighted to have Deepak Arora with us today. Deepak is Director Commercial Excellence and L&D for AstraZeneca in India. He also supports the Asia Comex as an additional responsibility. So Deepak, delighted to have you and thank you for being here. In his current role, Deepak leads and manages diverse teams across Salesforce effectiveness, medico marketing, execution, e-commerce, institutional business, omni-channel, marketing excellence, as well as the BD function. With more than 2.5 decades of pharma experience in sales across geographies, including India, I think you worked with the who's who of pharma organizations, including Novartis, the global headquarters in Lilly, as well as in India, and now in AstraZeneca. So again, Deepak, delighted to have you. Thank you for being here. And saving the best for last, Sumeet, commercial and strategy leader, again, 2 decades of experience, been both an advisor as well as an operator. He's worked and renewed, transformed, and led new age businesses, built them ground up. Previously, Sumeet was head of digital transformation, commercial innovation at Cipla, and he's also been a business head at Dr. Reddy's and Cadila. Currently, Sumeet is a partner business consulting pharma and health sciences at E&Y. So Again, Sumeet, thanks so much for being here and taking the time out. And for all of you, also for all three of you, very happy to have you all. So today I thought what we'll do is we have about 45 minutes and we've got a decent audience. The intent is to talk about three themes. First, and across these themes, I'll maybe go across one by one, with each one of you. Uh, First one, talking about how is the last 2 years, and we all know we've all talked about it ad infinitum about how it's been a very different environment, but typically it's uh, every year, whether it's pre-COVID, during or after, there is something or the other that keeps changing and businesses need to respond. So the first theme we'd like to talk about is what changed in the last 2 years as far as dealing with HCPs is concerned. We'll then, would love to hear, since all of you have been executors and you are executing today, what have different pharma companies you have seen for, your own institution, others in the industry, how have they kind of evolved their marketing and sales organizations and, their agenda on dealing with this situation? And thirdly, the importance of behavior in driving both HCPs as well as your sales teams on how to engage with the organization. And finally, any advice you'd like to give the audience or sales leaders, marketing leaders today on how they should focus on as they continually evolve. So a bit of round robin questions, and then feel free to jump in if any one of you has a point to make. So first, I'll maybe tee it off with Rajiv. So Rajiv, if in a quick 2 minute summary, if you could tell us from again 40 years is a long time, but last 2 years prior to that and now, what are the typical things that have changed for pharma companies in Dr. HCP outreach? And what are the maybe 2, 3 major things that you are seeing that have completely changed?
Thanks, Anand. I actually called a few physicians to ask them to get their perspective, because I'm no longer, for the last few years, I'm no longer working with a pharmaceutical company. So I said, let me check both from pharma companies as well as physicians. So pharma companies, as far as the COVID products were concerned, they use lay media very, very effectively. That time they were in television, they were newspapers, they were all over lay media. Hey, this company has brought this COVID product, and this is an antiviral, or this is. So those products give a big boost to the companies that brought them, whether it is Glenmark or it's Micro or any other company. Uh, but for all other products, when I talk to companies like Lupin and others, what happened there was that uh, the life sciences diseases products, diabetes and hypertensive products, they continued to sell. In fact, people did stocked up a little bit because they felt they could not go to retail pharmacies again and again. So they stocked up. That's one change which happened. The other change which also happened is that the e-pharmacies got a big boost because people wanted medicines delivered at home. But both these phenomena were focused on cholesterol, hypertension, diabetes. So that sales automatically went up without doing much. Now comes on the promotion side. So when I was talking to the physicians, they said for the first wave, when and part of the second wave, when medical representatives could not go and physically call upon the physicians, what they were doing is they were sending WhatsApp with the promotional material. That is what most companies did. But more evolved companies, they set up video meetings with their sales managers or senior personnel. But the best practice that the physicians liked, because they had time, medical representatives were not calling on them, the patient footfall had also fallen. And I know physicians who were doing only telemedicine during COVID. So they had time. They had time and they were on electronic media all the time. So they mentioned that the evolved companies organize talks by key opinion leaders. So that is something which they felt they benefited from, because they could interact with key opinion leaders, ask questions, remove their doubts, and learn. Because there are no prescribed authorized CME in the country. So pharma companies only pitch in and provide help. Otherwise, if somebody who got a license to practice medicine 50 years ago can continue to practice without enhancing his or her knowledge.
Right.
Unlike the US or other countries where the knowledge has to be upgraded constantly and you have to constantly pass the exams to keep your license intact. So the only way you learn is when pharma companies help, and that is something which physicians truly appreciated. There are other reasons why that would work, but I think that is, I'll keep it for later. The conversation I had with the government on this topic, on the what are the most ethical ways of promotion and so on. So I will keep it that for later. But for now, this is what I observed has happened post-COVID.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rajiv. And this is a good intro. It also sets the context. So, Deepak, from your perspective, and if you may, do you have anything to respond to what Rajiv is saying in terms of this? Is there something different you've seen based on therapy or type of company or something of that sort?
No, first of all, thank you for inviting me for the webinar, and it's a pleasure to join the dais with Rajiv. As you said, Anant, he has created a lot of people because of his mentorship, leaders in pharma, and I am privileged that I worked under him and under his guidance. That whatever I am today, I think a lot of credit goes to Lily and Rajiv on that front. Coming to the question, I think we have witnessed a speed in technology that I would say. One thing which we can owe to COVID is about the speed in technology. We were talking about it, but I think the 2.5 years, what we have seen, a kind of transformation in everyone's thinking and execution is because of these, or because of COVID. And the overall healthcare ecosystem, whether it's government, whether it's NGOs, whether it's pharma, non-pharma, you will see that some buzzwords, even at the customer end or at the patient end, you will see that some of the buzzwords we were always thinking about and talking about, e-commerce or e-pharmacies. You see every household had that experience during this 2.5 years. So I would say, I think adoption of digital tools, telehealth, app-based ecosystem, make patient level data more available. So what we gained out of it is data analytics, big data, which we can now look at segmentation of our customers, look at segmentation of HCP's behavior, our own Salesforce behaviors based on what they're doing, what they're using. The e-commerce platforms were just earlier about refilling, but now the e-commerce has moved away from or above only from refills to a lot of other aspects of data dissemination, disease awareness, adherence programs. So you will see that things have really moved into that perspective. And adding on, I think the go-to-market strategy, which was 3 years back, and now when pharma leaders sit down or brand managers sit down, they have a totally different view of omni-channel strategy, which was only conventional couple of years back. And last but not the least, I think two major aspects of telehealth, the growth which we have seen in telehealth, and the e-commerce stickiness, which continued even after we get back to normal, are some of the pleasant surprises which are going to stay with us. And I think now people will be looking into how do we strengthen these platforms. And last but not the least, I think the capability setting of our CFT, Salesforce, medical colleagues, which we have tried to do now. I think people who will believe in it, continue adopting to it, transform, will grow. And that's what the push is by everyone in the pharma, saying, learn from what you have learned, de-learn from what you have learned, but do not go back to normal, because this is not going to be the context as we move forward.
Fascinating. All right. And it's interesting you touched on a few things. This is Sumeet, I'll come to you in just another 30 seconds, but I just wanted to hear Deepak on one bit that he spoke about, that, it's kind of been the push that's changed everybody. And so, personal story, I come from a medical family, so a lot of doctors in the family. And the default thought always was doctors are the last to change to anything. It's the most difficult to convince them to uh, think of a new way. So Deepak, you talked about telemedicine and you talked about segmentation, and probably I think we'll touch on this a little later, but I wanted to call that, or I thought that's very fascinating to know that the companies are changing, but also your customers, the doctors itself and HCPs are now open to new ways of interacting and learning around that. So, and Rajiv also talked about learning, right? So for them, so maybe we'll touch, come back to this. So Sumeet, now the ball passes on to you. What do you think are the top two, three things? And it would be great to get both an operator and an advisor's view, since you're doing both right now.
Yeah. No, so firstly, thank you for having me here. And I think the points which Rajiv and Deepak have mentioned, I fully endorse what they're talking about. But I'll take a step back because I think moving away from an operator role into a consultant role has also helped me to look at the life of the customer, and in this case, the HCP that we are discussing today.
Yeah.
And if we say that our lives were overwhelmed because of COVID in this period, then it may have been 10x for a doctor. I think the amount of responsibility that came his way without adequately being prepared for it. Of course, there were not enough therapies, products out there in the market, but still they couldn't say to a patient who walked in, right? So, I mean, the amount of responsibility they carried is humongous. It was overwhelming to say the least. I think a couple of changes which I want to add, which have happened and will remain, is one that the center of gravity so far for healthcare has been towards doctors. It's moved towards patients. I think patients have realized that they cannot rely on anyone. Of course, doctor is there as a caregiver, but they want to be far more self-reliant. They want to know their diseases a little more better. They want to know what needs to be done. So there's a little more proactiveness. Maybe the profile is getting more demanding as well, because the expectation is that doctor needs to have an answer for everything, and if not, I will check Dr. Google, I'll check Dr. Nutritionist, I'll check my doctor, the yoga teacher around me, and everyone else in my ecosystem who will be also advising me. So I think in that sense, the center of gravity has shifted. A lot more interest of patients to own their own health, I think, which is a good sign in that sense. Secondly, I think as a country, we have been facing a chronic issue of underdiagnosis for very long. What COVID did was to wake up every general practitioner that he is not a very, I mean, he has to be able to upskill himself and deal with problems which earlier he thought that were not in his purview. So if there is a respiratory tract issue and a viral issue which is happening, these are not distinct, they could be connected. So there could be possible comorbidities, and hence there needs to be a lot more ability to diagnose them early on. That pressure has been brought into the system a lot more. What it means is that the number of patients who earlier were missing diagnosis will get that now, because COVID has pushed the entire ecosystem to bring down the cost of diagnosis, affordability of diagnosis, and hence doctors need to upskill themselves and be able to use tools for better diagnosis. And these tools are, of course, hybrid, by the way. So EMR, teleconsult push them to use digital tools, but even the diagnostic tools are moving in that direction, and hence a lot more pressure on them to deliver. So given the greater responsibility that they are on, I think they expect a lot more power that they have, and I think companies around in the ecosystem need to give that power and empower them with solutions and support that they deserve.
Wonderful. And actually that that's quite revealing, Sumit. So thanks for that. And I'll maybe just go back to Deepak once, since Deepak, you talked about, and this is something Sumit also mentioned, the need for upskilling and getting these HCPs trained. And you talked about segmentation in your opening comment, Deepak. So would it be fair to now paint every HCP with the same brush in terms of openness to using digital or tools, or openness to learn or engage or whatever? So any thoughts or experiences you want to share?
No, I think even it was not being done earlier also when we were meeting face to face our customers. We always segmented them in terms of, advocate, trialist based. It was based on actually brand. It was based on your prescribing behavior. Now
Right.
we are moving towards patient centric, segmentation. The segmentation in terms of his or her use or preference of channels so that I can connect with him or her more efficiently. And I can tell you what we did in AstraZeneca. We just collated first year's channel preferences to an extent when he's opening the email, which day and time is preferred by him to either connect virtually or when he's actually opening, when he got time, he's opening emails, when he's actually going on Google to find some stuff or during his consultations. So, Manhattan Research, your Viva based platform, the AI data source gives you a very clear segmentation where your HCP's preferences are. Is he still a conventional or he's a digital adopter? And on that basis, you pick up your channel, whether it's your face-to-face followed by a digital webinar, followed by a Viva approved email or a virtual call. Now, I think the RIP has or the pharma world have learned reskilling of their field force as well as the customers so that they can have those touch points more qualitatively rather than just frequency based.
Fascinating. And Rajiv, do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
The only point I would like to make is that Deepak himself mentioned that these digital adoptions, both by companies and I would say to very large extent by physicians, and Sumeet also touched upon it, has accelerated during COVID. Because physicians, when I talked to them, they said they had time to spend more time on the digital media. So the only point I would like to make to Deepak is while you do segment the doctors today, the digital early adopters or those who prefer the physical touch, this is changing very fast. Because the same exercise, if you do 6 months or 1 year later, you would find a much larger number of physicians or a digital adopter. And Deepak is right. Telemedicine is here to stay. E-pharmacies are here to stay. And these changes are happening and they're dramatic. And I think they're good for everybody. They're good for ethics also. This is a point I want to touch upon later. But this is the digital media for dissemination of information is the most ethical way of promotion.
Oh, and so great. And it's good to hear.
Because I'm saying bluntly put, there is no whining, there is no dining, there is no travel.
Right.
There is no transactional. There's no transaction involved here.
Right.
It's pure and simple science. So that brings into the question of ethics as well, and which is something I would heavily advocate. And apart from segmentation, which is AstraZeneca is a very evolved company, and Gagan and Deepak are doing a great job there. But there are other technologies also companies have adopted. Deepak mentioned that they are able to see what time the physician opens an email. But there are companies, what they have done is they have given the tablets to reps. And when the reps go to the doctor to talk and promote, they are able to, sitting in the head office, they are able to see that which page on the tablet was opened how long. So, doctor is interested in videos, key opinion leaders video talk, or he's interested in adverse events, or he's interested in new drugs, or where he's giving more time, where he's giving less time. And in fact, if that data you want to use the segment the physicians on their interest, that would be awesome. I don't think companies have gone to that level of segmenting them, but they're definitely for considering each physician as a unique segment. The evolved companies are able to evaluate their behavior and their preferences and adopt to that.
Fascinating. And I think that's a good segue into the next part of what I wanted to talk about, Rajiv. And thanks for bringing that up. Is And I think all three of you have spoken about the need to segment based, your HCP doctors based on either how they engage with the patients, how they engage with the company, and and so on and so forth. There are various factors. How does it so now, assuming that you have some, even if it's a basic form of segmenting, and I'm a pharma sales excellence leader, and I've done some very basic level of categorization of my doctors and my audience. Now, how do I get the message across? So I have a I wouldn't say legacy, but I have a sales force and I have some digital tools at my hand. What is the right way to interact with these different segments? Would you like to, and maybe I'll start with this, Sumeet this time. How do you see this segmentation specific approach to, dealing with different segments? So yes, now I have some very basic segments and it might not be prescriber based. It might be based on different things. So
Sure.
what is the role of my digital tools and my physical force that I have today in dealing with it? Some real life examples would be great, Sumit, to hear.
Sure, sure. So, Anant, so beyond the standard practice segmentation and the adoption of the doctor and his digital preferences, which is the channel side, which was touched upon, I think fundamentally there are four distinct needs of doctors, and let me just touch upon all the four of them. First of them is the therapy needs. Right, he's in a practice where disease management protocols are undergoing a change. So whether he's aware of them or not, and who is making him aware, that's a need which somebody needs to fulfill, which includes new recommendations, new guidelines coming in, latest trials that are happening in that field. So there are those science-based therapy needs which are important for several doctors. Within that, then comes the choice of brand. So what's the price update that's happening in the competition across brands in the same molecule? What are new launches by different companies? Are there any new indications for which the therapy can be applied? And availability of brands, which are more transactional in nature. So therapy needs, brand needs, then comes the patient needs. There is lack of time at the patient doctor's end. So how this patient education can be enabled in a significant way, uh, how many camps that he can organize, how much interest he has towards the patient access and how he can enable that in his practice, both in institution as well as in his chamber. And then the other services which are required could be samples, a networking requirement, so certain accreditation, certain CMEs or honorary services. So between therapy, brand, patient, and services, across all these four, typically pharma companies focus a lot more on the brand part, which means that, and that reason is also because it was more field dependent, and the field did a better job at distinguishing the brand choices within a certain therapy. Not enough has been done on the therapy play itself, and also on the patient side. So with the digital advent, both therapy and patient side of needs is something that organizations, especially pharma companies, have found a way to reach directly to the doctor.
Right.
In a previous role in a pharma company, we ran large scale programs which were actually agnostic to the field teams, in a way actually combining the alternate choices that a doctor had within the same within the same therapy. Earlier it was presented by two different field teams. Digital channel, we started combining that and started explaining what patient profiles would benefit more from subtherapy A versus subtherapy B, and had communications around that. And of course, with the entire metric tracking of how many times he watched, how many times he responded back, it helped to understand the profile of those doctors better. And in the process, then you start understanding that if your portfolio is very genericized, then you're playing more of a share of voice game for that therapy within the company, and hence maybe you're better off to be heavy on the brand related messaging, which can be driven digitally but via the rep, because there's a lot more brand communication which the rep can do, both
Yeah.
physically and digitally. However, if you are focused on newer therapies, and classical cardiometabolic is a space where there are a lot of new launches that have happened, are going to happen, there's a lot of therapy shaping happen there. And in that case, a lot more direct engagement between the organization and the doctor can be enabled Unfortunately, reps will play a certain role, but not a larger role. So the choice of channel and the choice of content for therapy show shaping will be very different. Yeah. And of course, wherever it's chronic, I think patient management has a significant part to play. So the patient part of needs can still be done a lot more easily directly, can be automated. A lot of intelligence can be built into what kind of patient content is being pushed to the doctors based on the RCPA work. So that's another part which digital is enabling in pharma companies. And I think there is still a space for non-pharma companies to play. What I am seeing is that there is a limitation to which a product focused or a portfolio focused company can move towards customer obsession. There is a difficulty. So they will travel a distance, but if you keep the customer at the center of offerings, then e-pharmacies, um, clinic management solution companies. I think these are organizations, many other startups around patient queue management. I think these are organizations which are finding their way in being able to fulfill customers' demands. I mean, you can imagine the value of listing your business on Google My Business is there today for doctors. But how many of the pharma companies are playing that game? In fact, non-pharma companies are playing that game much better. I think there is a wake-up call for the incumbents in the industry. But at the same time, from a doctor standpoint, he is pampered more and more as other industries try to establish themselves in this ecosystem and make it more comprehensive.
Thanks for that, Sumeet. Yeah, and some interesting points you touched on. And I thought maybe you'll bring Deepak in and maybe respond to Sumeet's points are you facing and do you see that challenge as well from non-pharma companies? So I had two parts to the question, Deepak. So one is what Sumeet said. Secondly, given, now there are multiple, these and the original question, multiple segments and different ways of reaching out. Do you see the role of your field team remaining the same, improving, diminishing? And so maybe both you can take one after the other, Deepak.
Yeah. So I think the first and the foremost is that those days are gone when we were saying either or. It has to be together. So if I look at the example I will give on non-pharma is all these wearables which were earlier used only for exercise and other things. Now you can really map a patient journey and the gap which you see in that patient journey where you're fitting in your brand value proposition to it. So it's pharma, non-pharma coming together. Another example is this whole data power, which was used as data analytics for something else. Today, I think from a discovery of new treatments, as well as research-oriented organizations are leveraging artificial intelligence. And why do I talk about artificial intelligence? Is about machine learning to translate several decades worth of research data spanning into molecule trials, or making sure the registries which were earlier costing a lot of money, now it's worth in terms of one is speed has improved. Secondly, the data comes in and it becomes very cost effective. Another example I will give you is again, it's pharma, but I think you will see how the event management companies have really looked into upscaling their digital or omni-channel perspective. Is that recently last year, European Society of Cardiology, on an average, the event which happened in these cities of European Society of Cardiology meetings had around 7,000 to 8,000 attendees coming and joining, and which Rajiv was also pointing in that, all that travel, being there, wining, dining, and all those things. Last year, the enablement of the event-based companies through digital, they had 30,000 participants joining this event, which I think at a very cost-effective way, you did the data dissemination of breaking new trials, breaking scenarios of data, case studies, all happened at the same time. All complete world got to know about it. So I think the data dissemination, the power of AI-based analytics, which is basically of the digital world, is now joining hands with pharma to look into their needs and making sure that we enable it. And I think the rep or the field force or the cross-functional team of pharma companies are also realizing that if they do not pick up on these capabilities today, they will be left behind because customers are way ahead. I can tell you, when we look at the research data from Manhattan, which just came in last quarter, it shows in the 24 hours, 6 to 8 hours, the physician is on digital platform. either searching data, talking to their peers, between consultations, looking back into the treatment methodologies, trying to find out new trials and other things. So if the HCP or the physician is way ahead, I think we need to make sure that we speed up to his expectations.
Fascinating. And so, and this is great. So the second part, Deepak, you talked about. So while there is a digital channel as well, how does this impact your rep, your field force today on being able to engage with these different? So both one, the overall thing is changing, but also since we all spoke about segmentation in the beginning, different segments, different needs. So a rep might end up having one very digitally savvy doctor in their portfolio and one who's completely, still happy to engage on a face to face and keep the old way of working. So how does the life of a rep change in this case, or how do you think of this for your teams?
I think the rep's believability on the content has tremendously increased. Content is the king today. Face to face, you were actually doing your brand reminders, 1 minute, 2 minutes calls, which were coming in until as you have something new to talk about. You were not given more than a minute in the chamber, right? And you were going in and coming out. But virtual platforms with different channels have given you kind of an opportunity to showcase your data through cross-functional team. Not you're not the only one who's selling. You have the value proposition of the brand through data science, biomedical is shipping in. And I can tell you, as Rajiv sir also talked about that, during that COVID time, doctors also had some time. We can see that 1 minute call, which was face-to-face, has gone to 18 minutes approximate calls through Viva Engage.
Oh, wow.
That was the quality. And today I can ask Gagan or anyone can ask their general manager or CLT to come and work. It will be like a couple of days in a year because of the busy. But during COVID, I think we went around all the cities virtually to connect with our KOLs and having that good discussions, and they remember it. So I think rep have understood, the field force has understood, and they now value the omni channel, and they know that it cannot be just one or the other. They have to mix as product basket is mixed is the same as the omni channel. And then I think I should mention about worxogo because we had that kind of inhibition what to do. But I think the real-time coach also helps the rep saying, how do I look at my KPIs, which will get me incentivized or which will improve my productivity or performance if I also get an AI buddy along with me. Apart from my FLSM or SLSMs, if I have an AI buddy with me, which is nudging me which channel, how to use, where to use, and where are you today in your performance compared to your peers, I think this is getting exciting and they are building on their capabilities. And I'm sure, I think whatever we have learned, we will continue doing it. The only piece is, as we get back to normal, how do we engage our field force, making sure they still get 20-30% of their calls are omni-channel. If we continue that learning, I think that's where the upskilling challenge of L&D team will be optimized.
And great, and thank you for the shout out, Deepak. But I think it's great to hear this thing of that there is an evolution for the rep as well, right? And they also need to constantly keep figuring out the best way to engage. And that 1 minute and 18-minute example was fascinating. I'm sure the audience already knows a lot of this, but it's fascinating to hear how you need to have a lot of stuff to say if you are there for 18 minutes, right? It feels like a short time, but 18 minutes can really stretch. So if you're not as a rep, you don't have you're not on top of your game, it'll be a problem. So I'll now move to Rajiv, and Rajiv, we all know this, right? The industry knows it more than all of us, but you've been a big proponent of building and building teams and getting them to be empowered, the field team. So what are your thoughts, Rajiv, on this, specifically on the changing nature of reps? Now there's omni-channel, there's digital, there are various ways. So, and not only brand that they have to talk about. So what do you see as the rep and the manager's changing role?
Um, Let me give you a little bit of an historical perspective, and
Sure.
then I'll come to the current status. When we started Lilly, the company started in October 92. We launched in the country in May of 93. We didn't have, this was Lilly's entry into India, and we didn't have many products. So we had hardly 4 or 5 products. And, those days, multinationals never copied each other products. They launched their own parent company's products only into India, whereas Indian companies have the freedom to launch any product. So their portfolio was very robust, constantly launching new products, exciting products. And here we had insulin and Distaclor and just 3 or 4 products. What do we do? So we came with a crazy decision. We said, if we can't differentiate on the product, we will differentiate on the people. So the sales people, or rather the whole company, the kind of people we recruited, there was a very strong 7-step process, and I've written about it. There are chapters in textbooks on it. There are chapters in magazines on it. There are chapters in books on it. There are webinars on it. So this has been published a lot. The way we differentiated on people and the quality of people, and trust me, we may say that digital, well, you can say digital or the rep. I would say digital is an enabler to the rep. And our success was, for 15 years, Lilly remained the fastest growing company in India just because of its people.
Right.
And the people who joined as fresh graduates. And let me give you some specifics. Fresh graduates, where their first job was Lilly. They started their career in their early 20s with Lilly. Managing director of AstraZeneca, Gagan himself, he started his career in pharma with Lilly. Managing director of GSK, Sridhar, he started his career with Lilly as a fresh graduate. So managing director of Roche, Deepak himself started his career with Lilly. So these is a contribution of Lilly to the industry. That said, the single biggest element of expense in sales marketing for a pharmaceutical company is the other reps. You cannot say that there is any technology or digital or any tool that will substitute the rep. I count all of those as enablers to the reps. Whether you are doing in a physical CME program or whether you're doing a digital program, after all, it is a rep and reps relationship which is getting the doctor to the platform. If you didn't have reps, can you run a digital program? You just can't. Deepak talked about getting 30,000 people. You can't get one person to join you. These are the reps and their relationships. And even if reps gets 2 minutes or 3 minutes, there are good reps and there are bad reps. There are productive reps and non-productive reps. So the very, very crudely and bluntly and simply put, the sale of a pharma company is a sum total of the sale of each rep. So the productivity of each rep is sacrosanct, and enhancing the productivity with the digital tools in the changing environment, that is where some companies like AstraZeneca have excelled. You use this technology, whether you're giving them tablet or whether you're asking him to bring the physician to the webinar and supporting with digital programs. I would say both go hand in hand. The reps training, reps performance, reps quality, and of course, Deepak talked about worxogo, which is nudging and enhancing reps productivity. They go hand in hand with all other tools that you're using to promote the products.
Fascinating. And would you want to also, and just I'll take not more than 30 seconds, Raj, if you can talk about what are the 1 or 2 things for the reps, and I'm not talking of the past, but going forward, like you said, there used to be complimenting and all that. That's any examples specifically you'd like to talk about, saying how do you get your reps to continue to engage with the HCPs the way that they should be engaging today?
See, the old and tried and tested formula that we found, that it's a very lonely job. Your boss works with you 2-3 days in a month. It's a lonely job. It's a frustrating job. You're waiting for hours to get 2 minutes with the doctors. And then you have to do your 10 calls in the day. You have to plot your movement from one to another. And that is another where many companies are using digital tools. They have all the doctors' data centralized, and they are using GPS for planning the movement from one doctor to the. So that helps the rep to move from one to another and makes the 10 calls in a day. And other is that to save his time on reporting. There are technologies being used where through GPS, the minute so he doesn't have to take out his cell phone or go to a computer and record a call. So the more you can use technology to improve the productivity of rep, the better it is. And then I gave the example of using the tablets and all that.
Yeah.
And getting the reps to participate in even if it's your CME programs and whether you've got 30,000 people, but having reps there participate in that, I think that goes a long way in improving and building this relationship. And continuous training, I would say, is a must, because as I said, it's a very lonely job. But if you're getting the rep back into head office every 3 months or every 6 months, and not only product knowledge and science knowledge, sharing this new digital technologies and the segmentations and all the other tools that you're using, sharing with the reps so that he can participate in this program, I think that would go a long way in improving the productivity of reps and getting more value out of all these tools.
Great, thank you.
I beg to differ on something here. I just want to
Sure.
come in. So see, this whole notion that rep is see, in India, there are 8 lakh doctors, and even the largest of the companies don't have an influencing power, to 50 to 80,000 doctors, so less than 10% of those doctors. And to that extent, there is a role that the physical teams play. There's no taking that away. But I think there is also a need to change the lens to keep the doctor at the center and see what matters to him. Whether he is looking for a physical touch point all the time, or he is rather looking for a healthy blend of the two. So while there is a role for the physical teams to play, I think the question is not how do you make the rep leverage digital alone. That's, I think, still a part of the puzzle. A larger puzzle is that what part of the doctor's life you're able to improve through digital tools, and
Yep.
rep may play part of it, but there is a lot that's happening directly with the doctors as well.
Absolutely.
And it's like saying that the kirana shops never believed that an Amazon will take away part of their business simply because they had the proximity to consumers near their home. But Amazon has said that yeah, there's a space for both to coexist, and I think Amazon's growth has only taught us that each of the neighborhood kirana is also trying to define their service level when it comes to a 5-10 minute delivery. Is just improving their own skills. I think we should not limit ourselves to the potential of this opportunity based on the skills that we hire at the rep level. There is another use case of the area managers to play a role. And how do you democratize the key account management concept from institutions to doctors' clinics, and the role that managers can play there, while reps will play their role, but there is an increasing role also of the first line manager, which will play a significant role in shaping the relationship.
Can I get 1 minute here?
Sure,
there was a time in the United States when pharma companies thought that the reps are not required and they wanted to reduce the number of reps. Because there a rep can meet a doctor once in 3 months. Once in 3 months. And that also with appointment taken much in advance. And then there was Pfizer, which went ahead and increased the sales force, and everybody realized that you cannot do without reps. I am with everybody on the use of technology. But if anybody is trying to tell me that technology can substitute a rep, I'm not going to agree to that.
Yeah, no, but I think this is great, Sumeet and Rajiv, because one of the best parts of being in India is that you can have two completely opposite points of view, and they coexist in one individual at the same time, and they both are true and they work because it is such a diverse and large field. So And I completely agree with that. Deepak, would you like to comment? This is a fascinating conversation.
No, I think that's why we have gone away from the word digital. We say omni-channel, and
Okay.
which has rep in the center, because end of the day, it is omni-channel. It's very different vehicles and channels, and
Right.
rep is part of it, orchestrating all those channels to make sure the preference and the content is disseminated. So there's no debate on it. It's just saying, I think what Sumit is also saying and Rajiv is saying, that the times were, it was one. Now the time is that how we invest on our rep to make sure that he or she is really skilled of using these omni channels or preferences to make the connect more qualitative, because the market is getting cluttered and there's huge competition, and your share of voice really matters. So it's just not about one visit. It's about one visit doubled or tripled by the other channels which you can connect with that customer with. But for sure, no debate on rep for sure.
So Deepak and Rajiv, let me paraphrase, because this is where the difference lies. Omni-channel is centered around the doctor or the rep, is a question that each
No,
pharma
no.
company
See,
to answer for themselves.
today there are companies, and I have participated in that also, who that want try to make patient the center of the universe. It didn't
Yes.
work. Doctor is the center of universe. Whatever channels you use are to influence the physician, because he's the decision maker. He's
Right.
deciding on your brand. So
Absolutely.
right now, the way it exists is it's a focus is on not on the rep at all. The focus is always been on the doctor. In fact, the how you enable the rep or use the technology to influence, that is what we are discussing here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And again, so sorry for interrupting, folks. So we have, we have to move to the next thing very quickly. But I'm loving this, and so if there is anyone from the audience who has a counter or an agreement to either one of the statements, please feel free to drop it in. But I'll just move to the next, and we'll take maybe 5-7 minutes on this last segment, which is around, and I think we've already talked a lot about this, is around the importance of uh, behavior. uh, and how do you see, how are you ensuring that your reps, Sumit, you mentioned area managers as well, right? The ABM concept. And how is this new, so you can say new way of working, or there are different established behaviors in the teams, that this is the only way I'll go and deal with a doctor or a physician when I go into their chamber. And now there is suddenly 18 minutes of conversation. I need to be theoretically be planned, have it in my mind. It might, it might not happen every time, but off the off chance I get one in my roster who I have to spend 15 minutes with, I need to be prepared. So the question, and maybe I'll start this time with Deepak. Uh, are there what are the behavior realignments that you are seeing, or you've already successfully implemented, or unsuccessfully you've tried something did not work? Would be great to hear, since you also spoke about the rep being at the center. Uh, are there some examples or thoughts you want to share for the
No, I
audience?
think first is that the believability, and the believability will come with real world evidence. And that's what we did at AstraZeneca. We helped them to understand the market dynamics. We brought our reps into a field advisory boards before we made any strategies. We had field advisory boards having their voice in terms of making that strategy or execution plan. That, and then what, peer-to-peer interaction, which we say, when it works in HCPs, it also works with our field force. Rather than we standing up on the stage and talk about this is what we need to do, if one of their own peers stand up and say, I did it, I used it and it was successful, has a very different connotation to it. And that's what we did of our competency-based assessments, bringing omni-channel part of it, all reskilling, um, the reskilling workshops, which we did. We did it through digital, virtually. Again, telling them that, face-to-face training meetings versus what we're doing now has no major difference. It's just that you're social networking or having a coffee together. That's what you are missing. Otherwise, the content delivery part, understanding is all being much more effective and cost effective as well as time effective. So I think we did a lot of work in terms of upskilling their capabilities. also making sure we go down on some of those paperwork, because one of the question Arindam said, while we are trying to approach a different way of working, upskilling them, but also we need to make sure that we have the balance between work and life. So there were no meeting days. There were days or hours which were only focused on their degree platform, which is mainly training capabilities. There were some times in the morning, afternoon, evenings, which were no meeting time, where they can spend time with their family members for lunch, dinners, or anything else. So we have to really look into, in today's scenario, while the world is really speeding up, how do we make a balance, not only for personal life, but also giving them time to have their own time of reading, upskilling themselves. And last but not the least, I think the ecosystem around HCPs with virtual care clinics, e-pharmacy supports, or patient education initiative like teleeducators, we brought reps to witness it, and created some case studies so that we can convince them that we have to be all together in it. It cannot be my initiative or his initiative. It's our initiative to make sure the execution is at its excellence.
Great. And thanks, Deepak, for that. Maybe Rajiv, if you want to come in on this one, on new behaviors, learned behaviors. I'm sorry, I'm rushing a bit. I know we have 5-7 minutes more, so I'd like to get in both Sumeet and Rajiv's comments in. So Rajiv, for you, new learned behaviors or old ones for the reps, and Sumeet, I'll come to you for the ABM one because there's a question on that also. So Rajiv.
No, I want to uh, digress totally here and
Sure.
want to bring in a topic which we haven't touched and which is of ethics.
Okay.
Initially multinationals ruled and they had patented products and they only talk science. Even today, generally you can segment the market that multinationals talk science, and there is a new term called CRM, where the company says reps are not important, and what we will do is we will build a direct relationship. And many companies have suffered. Eris suffered in between when its name came up that they were bribing the doctors, and doctors stopped prescribing their product for a while. Abbott had a big problem. They signed the same contract with 200 doctors, took them to the United States, and they were said they are our consultants who will come back and train other doctors. So we are training the trainer. How can you train 200? And the latest is MCure. Just now, as we speak, income tax has charged them with 600 crores of suppression because they gave funding to medical association, and medical association in turn use exactly the same money to fund the foreign travel of doctors recommended by the company.
Sure.
And there's a direct correlation there. My point here is that all that we are discussing today about technology, and I've had this discussion with the Secretary of Department of Pharmaceuticals, and he had called everybody. He had called Indian Medical Association. He had called OPPI. He had called AIOCD. He had called everybody on this unethical promotion. My point here only very simple. The digital way of promotion is the most ethical, and that's what he agreed with me.
Yeah.
And that's what I had brought up. It's a 7-8 year old story.
Right.
So the more we use technology and tools and digital, the more ethical the science and promotion gets. And reps is at ease, companies are at ease, you can sleep peacefully at night. So I just wanted to bring this. Sorry, I'm going totally off topic. But this is my strong advice to all pharma companies to not fall into the trap of CRM. Okay, look, we can bribe the doctors, build a relationship with the doctor directly with the company, and then we will get sales. It's short term. And if you can bribe 1 lakh, somebody can bribe 2 lakhs. There is no end to it. And doctors have different needs. They need to go abroad, yes. They need to attend parties, yes. But they also need science, and they also need to enhance their learning. You can choose which need you want to fulfill. Sorry, I just thought I'll bring that in, even if though it's not part of the discussion.
No, but I think this is good to get that. So, and Rajiv, so coming back to the behavior one, and thank you for the comment. I think that helps. I'm sure the audience appreciates it. What uh, around learned behaviors for reps? Any quick comment you have on that to make, or new ones or old ones to give up?
See, one thing that COVID has taught us, is that those who adapt survive. So constant learning and adaptability is critical. And those reps who have adjusted and adapted their behavior have succeeded more. That's all I want to say here.
Perfect. No, and then yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'll come Sumeet to you, and I think there's a question also from
Yeah,
Denuka
I can read
on.
that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So around the role of ABMs in enabling this Omni rep model. So do you want to talk about that?
So the point is that when we are segmenting doctors and we are starting to understand their behavior and what they believe in, what they don't believe in, there are certain realizations, and technology can only play a role to give you algorithms. I think eventually choices have to be made by pharma companies in this case. Uh, and traditionally, the choice was independent for team A within a therapy and team B within a therapy, and both of them could independently approach the doctors with their P1 brands, which they believed they wanted to push because it's their KRA. However, I think if you put the customer at the center of omni-channel journey, and I am repeating because pharma companies have still not understood that when you put customer at the center, then you don't think brand A and brand B. You understand what the customer's needs are. And in this case, more than the rep, it's the area manager. And I'm calling him out because he's at a level where he's not doing what the rep is doing. He can take a step back and understand that a doctor who has a behavior of prescribing a certain sub therapy, you don't have to break your head and make him prescribe sub therapy B just because team B has sub therapy B as their prime product.
Right.
A smarter way is to go with what he prefers, and don't and save that bandwidth of the organization to give it to some other doctors instead of spending it on this doctor, of course leading to annoyance to him as well. So there are choices to be made. Technology will propose what rules are working, what rules could be looked at, but based on the rules, what decisions and choices a pharma company has to be made. I think the field advisory concept, where an area manager has a voice to decide that, yeah, I think this is the right thing for the doctor. There's somebody locally who needs to take a call, and somebody one level above, like the area manager, is probably in a better position to do that. Yeah, I'm just calling that out as a stark
Yeah.
example of how bandwidth will be saved and how the expansion of the customer base today from 50,000 will start going to 1.5 lakh.
Fantastic. Wonderful. There is a question from Suresh, and maybe I'll again bring Deepak into respond to that, talking about digital transformation and the importance of regular training for your users. Uh, so how have you kind of resolved or solved for that, or attempting to solve for that?
No, I think that's a good question. And I said in the earlier conversation also that we have, while we have a day's plan or a week or a
Yeah.
month's plan for a field force in terms of, their connects, programs and other things, there has to be a time out, which is basically focusing on capability building, whether
Right.
it's to workshops, whether it's to degree platforms where you can go virtually and attend sessions, or last but not the least, the biggest one where you can learn is your first adha ghanta or 1 hour where you spend with your coach before starting the field work, where you can go through your performance, not only on numbers, but in terms of, what are you doing from your capability building, or what you're trying to execute, implement based on the strategy, based on the touch point platform which you have created for, helps
Right.
you in terms of reinforcing, relooking, revisiting, and try to keep on building on. The biggest learning you do is in the field rather
Right.
than on the workshops. And that's where your FLSMs, your coaches, your training leads can really help you as with the real world experiences, which you can believe on. And your HCPs. End of the day, I think the biggest critics or biggest feedback which has been given is by your physicians attending, opening your emails, attending your programs, connecting with you. That tells you, things are working or things are not working.
Fantastic. And so I'll just make a quick note, and I know we have another 5 or 7 minutes. So the coach Deepak, and again, thanks for pointing that out. So obviously, worxogo has this coach, which is your field rep's personal digital coach, which helps them become better versions of themselves. And like Sumeet mentioned, for area managers and account managers also, you can drive the behaviors and the activities you want based on your business priority, connect it to your Salesforce, your Viva, your CRMs today, and drive the initiative. So I just wanted to make that quick note while we move on. So Sumeet, last concluding comments specifically on, so maybe I'll start with you now. The top 2 or 3 things that you would leave the audience with in terms of uh, dealing with HCP needs. So what are the top 2 3 things you think that must be looked at? Maybe summarizing whatever you've said till now.
Yeah, no, so I think spending more time with doctors with an idea to understand where are his pain points, instead of going all out, understanding his pain points and trying to fix them. And there may be small things to be done, but I think they will go a long way in the advocacy ladder. That's one. Secondly, I think pharma companies have a chance to think bold, and that's what I would encourage to not go with the traditional mindset of the limited physical reach of doctors. There's a lot more that can be done. Heavy on rep with light digital, heavy on digital, light rep. So
Right.
that both combination exists, and one should make use of both these opportunities. And thirdly, of course, I think the center of gravity is towards the patient. So there's a lot more that can be done today in terms of the patient journeys that pharma companies can invest in. And why just pharma companies? I think there are a whole lot of companies which are investing there, but that's the share of wallet which I think that journey needs to be built out more clearly by the entire ecosystem. One last comment, Anant, is that the cliche of Spider-Man, with greater responsibilities with greater power comes greater responsibilities. I think doctors have been entrusted and thrusted with the responsibilities. I think it's time to give them more power, and the entire ecosystem needs to help them do that.
Wonderful. Love the Spider-Man reference. That's Sumeet. Rajiv, any concluding comments from you?
No, I would like to repeat what I said earlier,
Yeah.
that times are changing, things are changing. Be flexible, be adaptable, and then now the technology and tools are available. Uh, Use them to the. And I liked one thing which Sumeet said, that if we can actually become more patient centric.
Yeah.
Very few companies are doing that. I attended one day as an advisor, I attended a one-day workshop on diabetes where the company had actually said, and I had taken an IT guy with me who said, I'll give you a tool, very interesting tool, where each patient can have an app in the phone, and company can provide an app in the tablet of the doctor, and whatever data the patient puts in that app,
Mhm.
diet, daily exercise, tablet taken, and then what are the blood sugar when the self-testing, what are the blood sugar levels on a daily basis. Then physician can monitor sitting in the chamber the health of each patient on a regular basis. And
Right.
the company said, we will provide to the patient a nutritionist for a diet. A physician, of course, is there, and reminders about the brand. And in fact, we had brought in an e-pharmacy there, okay, which would make the product available to the patient's home on a monthly basis so that he can take the medicine on time every day. So all this to improve patients' health, and the company's interest was that if it improves compliance, because one of their products where we were involved, we found that if we don't help the patient was using the therapy properly only for 1.5 months. But if we help the patient take care of himself or herself, they were using the therapy for 3.5 months. So actually sales more than doubled just by focusing on patients. So that the point Sumeet brought is critical, but very few companies are doing it. And especially in lifestyle diseases, that is very, very important. And if that is something which more companies
Oops. We seem to have
the
lost.
health of the patients, it will reduce the burden on the doctors and reduce general healthcare costs and improve health of the country.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rajiv. And again, it's great to close on a point of agreement. So this is thank you for those comments as well. And Deepak, maybe we'll end with you. So the last concluding comments from you on the top 2 or 3 things that you'd advise your colleagues, as they look at this changing
I
space?
think I will repeat what Sumit and Rajiv sir said. I think it's in very exciting times. We have not seen the power of AI or the power of data analytics as we are seeing now. And it's helping, actually, end of the day, it's helping in terms of spending your time at the right place with the right perspective. And it is patient centric, I think, because end of the day, it's everything revolves around that patient. Start to stay on is, I think, will be helped if you really look into how do we create a patient story, and the needs what physicians are really looking forward for. And last but not the least, content remains the king. Whatever we do, if the content is not strong, whatever AI based or omni channels we use, it's not going to help. So our focus should be content, our focus should be patient, and helping physicians in making sure that whatever touch points we are having with them is bringing some meaningful conversations.
Fantastic, fantastic. So I think we are pretty much on time, on dot. So thank you, folks. Thank you, Rajiv ji. Thank you, Deepak, Sumeet, for sharing your views. I think this was wonderful. I've got a lot. I mean, some of the data points and the insights shared, they were quite interesting. I hope the audience did too. Is there, if anyone wants to reach out to you, is there a way you would like to share with them, through LinkedIn or through some other means? If you'd like, we can put that up later. Uh, and they can come back to you and ask you for more details, or even if they want to have a conversation. So again, uh, thanks everyone. We really enjoyed it. Have a wonderful day and a week ahead, and look forward to maybe doing this again soon.
Thank you,
Thank
Anand,
you.
for being a
Thank
great
you.
host.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great day, folks. See
You
you.
too.
Bye bye.
See you.
Thank you, Anant, Sumit,